take it off, but I had to wear it for a moment anyway. My thanks and gratitude to you, Rector Kitas, and to the University of Athens for singling me out to receive this amazing honor. And my thanks as well to my dear friends Rosa Floru, Byron Raizes, Peter Graham, for all they have done to bring this about, and I know what they have done, as well as to Professors Marika Tomadaki, Marianti Yani, Spiori Nicholas Vedas, and Dr. Nick Panagopoulos, and to the Byron Conference Organizing Committee. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Byronists, fellow Philhellenists, as all of you doubtless know, Lord Byron set foot on Greek soil 200 years ago this very month. He went ashore with his friend Hobhouse at Patras, unknowing that 11 years later, in that town's square, the Greeks would formally declare independence from Turkey and launch their struggle to secure that independence. 200 years ago this very month. What a moment for a Byron conference that is about to take place. And for me, what a moment to be asked to address such a company as are here today, and to be honored as I have been by the University of Athens. I vividly recall the day I, too, first set foot on Greek soil. It was in early April 1966, a month and a day of no particular significance, except perhaps that I was as thrilled in my minor key as Byron was in his major. I had just finished writing my dissertation on Childe pilgrimage, and a trip to Greece was how my wife and I wanted to celebrate that event. And so we came, rented a little Volkswagen Bug, and for 2 weeks drove all over the Peloponnese and Attica. It rained the day we drove up to Delphi. The roads were oil-tarred, perilously slick, and without guardrails. Several times we nearly went off the edge of one of those precipitous heights. But we survived, and here I am called back to this wonderful country under circumstances I could not then have imagined. Thank you. Though I still can't imagine why anyone would want to hear me say anything more about Lord Byron. As we say in my native New York City, enough already. But Byron, like his beloved Greece, is inescapable, burning fiercely like some stellar hypergiant, a kind of CB Canis Major, the center of an enormous gravity field. And Greece was such a central force for Byron, at the outset of his legendary life, as well as at the end. When Byron left England in 1809, his destination was Greece. He explained why in a poem that made him famous, the first 2 cantos of Childe Harold, which is the record of his trip to Greece and his initial experiences there. His life in England had come to seem to him tedious, decadent, pointless. As he observed of his alter ego, Childe Harold, apart he stalked in joyless reverie, or with pleasure drugged he almost longed for woe. But Greece, the idea of it filled him with the conviction that there he might come alive again. How fired he was by his imagination of the place is apparent from one of the most remarkable moments in the famous poem he wrote about his trip. He is in the first canto of Childe Harold, narrating his travels in Spain and the dismal scenes he's observing there, still in his restless flight. Suddenly, he cuts off his dreary narrative and bursts the poem apart with this spontaneous passage. O thou, Parnassus, whom I now survey, not in the frenzy of a dreamer's eye, not in the fabled landscape of a lay, but soaring, snow-clad, through thy native sky, in the wild pomp of native majesty. What marvel if I thus essay to sing? The humblest of thy pilgrims passing by would gladly woo thine echoes with his string, though from thy heights no more one muse will wave her wing. Oft have I dreamed of thee, whose glorious name who knows not man's divinest lore. And now I view thee, 'tis alas with shame, that I in feeblest accents must adore. When I recount thy worshippers of yore, I tremble and can only bend the knee, nor raise my voice, nor vainly dare to soar, but gaze beneath thy cloudy canopy in silent joy to think, at last I look on thee. Now, to this point in his poem, he's been telling us about his experiences on the Iberian Peninsula, as if he were traveling there. But with these stanzas, we realize that he is, in fact, already where he wants to be, in Greece. And we now discover that her inspiration has been at work with the poem from the very first lines. Writing in the orbit of Greece, as he has been all along, in view of Parnassus itself, he is moved to this splendid outburst. It is a signal moment in the history of Romantic poetry and of Byron's characteristic Romantic address, so different from the reflective Romantic moods we know from Wordsworth and Keats. For all its theatrical energy, however, the finest tone of the passage is not struck from its personal reflection. Byron's spontaneity here is a gesture of gratitude. Having left England in an utterly dispirited condition, he discovers that Greece is fulfilling his dreams. The passage marks the birth of that romantic energy for which Byron would become the Western byword. And the move of subjective enthusiasm, that signature romantic move, turns itself to an objective form. These stanzas are much less about Byron, a sign of his reviving life, than they are for Greece, a gift of love and praise. This important passage in Byron's poetry reveals how his romanticism differs so sharply from his English compeers. For all that he trailed his bleeding heart across Europe, for all that theatrical self-expression, even self-absorption, Byron's focus is nearly always directed away from his central self. I say nearly always because there was an exception, the catastrophic months that began in January 1815 and that only began to abate in the summer of 1817. These are the years that pivot around the tormented poems, the third canto of Childe Harold, the epistles to his sister, Darkness, The Prisoner of Schillen, The Dream, and of course, Manfred. Rightly included among his most important works, these poems have one crucial thing in common. They are all seeking an escape from a self-absorption that is strangling him. What is involved in the escape becomes clear if we look again at three other famous poems that spring from Byron's passion for Greece. Maid of Athens, the ballad known as The Isles of Greece, and his greatest single lyric, Messalongi, 22 January 1824, on this day I complete my 36th year. I'll begin with the Isles of Greece because it so clearly defines the issues that are at stake for Byron. Coming in the third canto of Don Juan, the ballad is being sung by a Greek bard at the love feast of Juan and Haidee on Lambros Island. Juan and Haidee want to make love, not war. But as the poet sings the praises of his country, he's torn by a sense of shame and contradiction. 'Tis something in the dearth of fame, though linked among a fettered race, to feel at least a patriot's shame, even as I sing, suffuse my face. For what is left, the poet here, for Greeks a blush, for Greece a tear. Must we but weep o'er days more blessed? Must we but blush? Our fathers bled. Earth, render back from out thy breast a remnant of our Spartan dead. Of the 300, grant but 3 to make a new Thermopylae. What? Silent still, and silent all? Ah no, the voices of the dead sound like a distant torrent's fall, and answer, let one living head, but one arise, we come, we come. 'Tis but the living who are done. Heidi and Juin are understandably oblivious to everything beyond the blessed island of their lovemaking. The bard is not. He is lamenting the country's political servitude and his own inaction. Hovering around this ballad is the figure of Constantin Regas, whose Greek version of the Marseillaise Byron paraphrased in his song, Sons of the Greeks, Arise. And Byron has set this ballad and the tale of Juin and Haidee at a precise historical moment. The period is the late 18th century, more or less contemporary with the story he told in the Giaour. The ballad thus takes us and Byron back to the reflections on Greece he was writing between 1809 and 1813. For instance, this opening of the Giaour, which is inspired by the tomb of Themistocles at the entrance of the harbor of Piraeus. No brother there to break the wave that rolls below the Athenian's grave, that tomb which, gleaming o'er the cliff, first greets the homeward veering skiff. High o'er the land he saved in vain. When shall such hero live again? Unlike the ballad in Don Juan, which is given as the work of Lambrose Bard, these lines come to the reader from Byron in propria persona. The sentiment is identical with the heroic passages that define the climax of the last canto of Childe Harold, A Romaunt. For instance, fair Greece, sad relic of departed worth, immortal though no more, though fallen, great. Who now shall lead thy scattered children forth, and long accustomed bondage uncreate? Not such thy sons who whilome did await the hopeless warriors of a willing doom, in bleak Thermopylae sepulchral strait. O who that gallant spirit shall resume, leap from Eurotas banks, and call thee from the tomb. And here we see again how complete is Byron's sympathy with the political condition of modern Greece. The fact is underscored in a fair copy manuscript he made of this particular stanza. To its 5 questions about who will now bring deliverance to Greece, Byron writes on that manuscript his own name 5 times across the text. Of course, that flamboyant gesture is Byron in a mode of high fantasy. It is a poetical dream. As such, the text says almost nothing about modern Greece, but a great deal about Byron and his craving, desire for what he called a being more intense. For the most part, his life circumstance gave an erotic shape to that quest for intensity. A being more intense was not only imaginable in love, it was achievable. But erotic achievement came at a price, as he well knew. It would always be fleeting, impermanent, doomed, like the love of Juin and Haidee. Erotic love cannot, alas, run forever, like a river. That is why Byron's greatest love was, from the first and last, Greece. Byron published The Isles of Greece in 1820, just as the Greeks were declaring their sovereignty in the town square of Patras and launching their struggle for independence. But Byron was in Italy, where he had only recently begun his affair with the Contessa Teresa Guiccioli, his famous last attachment. The affair turned out to involve both erotic and political intensities, however. Through Teresa's family, the Gambas, Byron began working with the Italian underground movement, the Carbonari. But events in Greece were never far from his mind. In September 1822, the Greek patriot Nicholas Karvelas visited Byron at Pisa to try to enlist him in the cause of the revolution. From that point, Byron's mind began turning back toward Greece. The Carbonari was a movement of desires and dreams. The Greek Revolution was the thing itself. It was the realization of what Byron in 1809 had only imagined as a hope. Even then, as he fantasized himself as a deliverer of Greece, he knew what alone would bring such a deliverance. So at the climax of his first installment of Childe Harold, he addressed the Greek people with a direct, hortatory question. Hereditary bondsmen, know ye not who would be free themselves must strike the blow. But that very blow had been struck by the Greeks in 1820, and Byron wanted to be there. 7 months after the Carvelis visit, Edward Blackheer, representative of the London Greek Committee, and Andreas Loriotis, delegate of the new Greek government, visited Byron on their way to the war front. After they left, Byron was determined to join the struggle in person. As we all know, he was unstinting in his material contributions to the cause of Greek independence. His death of a fever less than 4 months after he arrived in Messaloniki was not the end he wanted for himself, but it was a death that made a difference for Greece. It helped to heal the factional divisions that had been impeding the effort to break free of Turkish control. Between 1811, when Byron left Greece for England, and 1824, when he returned to Greece to die, he had become a very different person. The difference is apparent if we compare those 2 famous poems, the song Maid of Athens, written when he was preparing to leave Greece in 1811, and the immortal lyric he wrote on his return in 1824, Messaloniki, 22 January 1824, on this day I complete my 36th year. Maid of Athens is a poetic game of erotic fascination. The 3 young daughters of his landlady in Athens, Tarsia Macri, are the focus of this poetical game. The poem's well-known refrain, Zoe mu sas agapo, conceals an echo from Juvenal that his English school friends were certain to catch. In his notorious 6th satire against women, Juvenal deplores the artifice of affected Greek phrases like Zoe kai psyche as using in public the language of the bedchamber. Byron makes a playful refrain of this kind of language to show off not his coxmanship, but his poetical gamesmanship. His early poetry is replete with arch moves of this kind. Scholars, myself included when I commented on that poem 30 years ago, have not noticed the poem's smart aleck whimsy. But Byron's unseriousness is obvious from his letter to Henry Drury, his former tutor at Harrow, and our main source of information about the Macri family. Macri Farewell, excuse me. Obvious and understandable, since the girls were all under 15 years of age. I am dying for love of 3 Greek girls at Athens, sisters, 2 of whom have promised to accompany me to England. That's Byron in his letter. In fact, Byron was not dying for love of those young teenagers, though he was pleased to indulge himself with the crush, as we would say these days, that they had on him. When Byron returned to Greece, he became attached to another teenager, the 15-year-old Moreot boy, Lucas Chalandritzanos. As with John Edelston many years before, Byron grew deeply attached to Lucas. But this Greek youth was not a Cambridge choir boy. He was a young Greek patriot who had first attached himself to the guerrilla force led by Theodoros Kolokotronis. Lucas joined Byron's group after Byron had provided for the support and safety of his mother and sisters when they had to flee Patras. It's crucial to remember that Lucas joined Byron as his page to make war, not to make love. Lucas's devotion to the Greek cause was Byron's final wake-up call. "'Tis time this heart should be unmoved, since others it hath ceased to move. Yet though I cannot be beloved, still let me love." It is time to be unmoved, Byron initially thinks, because he is too old to be attractive to the boy. "My days are in the yellow leaf. The flowers and fruits of love are gone." But when he pursues his idea into the next stanza, the images begin to turn him away from his self-absorbed repining. "The fire that on my bosom preys is lone as some volcanic isle. No torch is kindled at its blaze, a funeral pile." These lines echo back to the ancient Greek method of communicating by signal fires, a practice Homer alludes to in Book 18 of the Iliad. Homer constructs a simile to describe the glory of Achilles in war. He imagines men fighting to save their city from an enemy, and this is Homer in a translation. At the going down of the sun, the line of beacon fires blazes forth, flaring high for those that dwell near them to behold, if so be that they may come with their ships and help them. Even so did the light flare from the head of Achilles. At this time of the going down of Byron's sun, his prayer, "Still let me love," is being answered. Through Lucas and the fire of Homer's verse, Byron is awaking to his deepest love passion and to his life's greatest mission and moment. And the light flares from the head of Lord Byron in lines of verse that will never lose their majesty. But 'tis not thus, and 'tis not here, such thoughts should shake my soul, nor now, where glory decks the hero's bier and binds his brow. The sword, the banner, and the field, glory and Greece around us see. The Spartan, born upon his shield, was not more free. For nearly 175 years, people read this poem in a text that mistook one of its most important words. The line, "Glory and Greece around us see," was printed for all those years, "Glory and Greece around me see." But Byron clearly wrote "us" in his manuscript, not me. The mistranscription obscures how Byron wanted his own glory to transcend the glory of Achilles. By losing himself in a human endeavor greater than himself, Byron would gain a glory greater even than the glory of Achilles. He made a gift of himself to the cause of Greece. The measure of that gift, Byron's own grasp of its meaning, is written in the title he gave to his poem. With rare exceptions, the poem is printed under the title, "On this day I complete my 36th year," adding then, secondarily, the subtitle, Messalongi, 22 January 1824. This is, however, not the title that Byron gave to his poem. Byron's title subordinates the personal matter of his birthday to the epochal place and time that was the poem's occasion. Messalongi, 22 January 1824. On this day, I complete my 36th year. Like the incorrect line long printed with the poem, "Glory and Greece around me see," the incorrect title puts Byron, rather than Greece, at the center of attention. But the poem was written to demonstrate Byron's awakening to a cause and a commitment greater than himself. His poem is a promise to give himself away to that cause. He gives the breathing words of his poem to the new voice of the living Greece, as he will shortly give his body's last breath, as the pledge of his troth, of his words and his purpose. In all the literature of the West, I do not know of anything that surpasses the wonder of these verses and the selfless gift they carry. So let me close by giving Byron the last word today, this great gift, not only to Greece, but to the world. Awake, not Greece, she is awake. Awake, my spirit, think through whom thy life blood tracks its parent lake, and then strike home. Tread those reviving passions down, unworthy manhood. Unto thee indifferent should the smile or frown of beauty be. If thou regretst thy youth, why live? The land of honorable death is here. Up to the field and give away thy breath. Seek out, less often sought than found, a soldier's grave, for thee the best. Then look around and choose thy ground, and take thy rest. Thank you very much.